Welcome to another parenting and mental health session. Tonight, I'm going to give you a little heads up. We're going to talk about a topic that is kind of tough. We're going to talk about suicide and crisis within your kids. So if that's something that feels like it's going to be too much, I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is what we were gonna spend some time on tonight. So, I wanted to give you that warning. However, the information I'm gonna give you is to help you figure out how to deal with this type of stuff. When, within your own home, and help you figure out whether or not this is something that is going on in your home, or if you think maybe a friend of your child's is going through something like this, it's just going to help you a little bit. So let me get started. I just want to give that as the heads up. Let me share my screen and we'll get going. Okay. So the title tonight is My Child in Crisis? So I wanted to start with that because sometimes we just don't know. And I've watched a few videos in recent, unfortunately, where I had parents that say, like, I just didn't know. And it just makes my heart sad, right? Because oftentimes there are warning signs. And so I wanted to go through some of this. A lot of the information here, a lot of the way this is presented comes from the National Council for Behavioral Health, and they provide something called mental health first aid. And so if you've heard of that and you have an opportunity to take a course in mental health first aid, I highly encourage it. Otherwise, you'll get some of this information tonight. So what are we dealing with here? Well, within tonight, what you expect is some facts, some how to recognize what's going on and how to help. So I hope of those three things, that's what you can get out of tonight, and we'll go from there. So one thing we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not our child is in crisis or emergency. And there is a difference, right? Crisis is difficult, it feels troubling, but it might be mental, emotional, or physical, but it's not dangerous, right? So there's a subtle difference there that we're going to talk about tonight. So what's the difference? So if a child or anyone, this also can apply to anyone, okay? Want to make sure everyone's aware of that. If someone is having a panic attack, right? They feel like we talked a little bit about this last week. They might have tightness in chest. They might have sweaty palms. They might feel like they're having a heart attack or they're about to die. It feels real when it is real, okay? The difference is instead of having a heart attack, a panic attack will not kill you, okay? Heart attack may. That's the difference. So this is a crisis, but not necessarily an emergency. Aggressive behaviors can be a crisis. Substance misuse, right? If you notice that your child is suddenly using substances that they weren't before. If there was a traumatic event, that might be crisis time for your child, especially if you notice a change in eating, a change in sleeping, all of those things, right? A change in anything significant that is changing the way they function day to day is enough to seek help. If you notice that your child suddenly has a lot of cuts or bruises that they don't normally have, that may be something where you want to reach out to a professional as well. An emergency, what is that defined as? A medical emergency, okay? So there really is a broken bone, something, profusely bleeding. I was just talking to a friend that their child, had blood in their stool. These are the types of things that are medical emergencies. If your child has behavior or suicidal thoughts and potentially behaviors like they have tried to do something, that is 100% an emergency. Severe effects of alcohol or drug use. So the child has passed out from using something. That would definitely be an emergency. Or a severe psychotic state. So what's a psychotic state? This is when reality, the child is no longer functioning in reality. They are doing things that are not in check with what everyone else says is reality. That's part of a psychotic state. So if things like that are happening, this is an emergency. You need to call 911. Okay. A crisis, there are crisis lines. There's a 988. There's a suicide helpline. You can reach out to a therapist, right? You can reach out to Bay Community Health to get an appointment. A crisis is, well, it needs to be attended to, is not something where you need to go to the emergency room. Emergency is 911. Call it and make sure that you get the help that you need for either yourself or your child. So how do you figure this out? Well, part of how you figure this out, and this is from Mental Health First Aid. I stole this because I found it to be very helpful. So these are the things that you do, and you have to assess your situation first of all. Okay, so it's not just clinicians that can help. That's what I want to make clear. Anyone can help in one of these situations. Just like it's not just doctors and nurses and emergency responders that can help during a heart attack or someone that is hurt themselves in the pool. If you learn CPR, someone that isn't in the medical profession can also help if they know CPR. So if you learn some of these basic techniques, you too can be helpful in a situation that might be a crisis or emergency and be able to tell the difference. So first you're going to, in all of these stages, you're going to assess. The first thing you want to do is approach. So as part of the approach, you're assessing for risk of suicide or harm, and you're going to, assess how you can help. We're going to talk about, I think we're, how you would do an approach. Okay. And I'll get to that into a little bit. I'll get into that a little bit later. When you approach something that's important that I think I may have left out, so I apologize for that, but when you approach, it's really important to approach the person not in a panic. We mirror each other's behaviors. You can notice it in kids, when one kid starts laughing and then the next one starts laughing, the next one happens all the time, or one person starts to yawn, the next person, it's meant because we are meant to be a tribal, a pack species. We're meant to be in groups. So we have functions that are subconscious that help us connect with our group. So if you go up in a panic, that is going to continue the panic in the person you're trying to help. So make sure that you have grounded yourself. Take a deep breath, right? Center yourself. If you need to bring something that helps remind you what to do, by all means, bring it with you. But assess first and remember that the more grounded and the more calm you are, the more helpful you're going to be to that person. So the approach needs to be calm, slow, kind, compassionate. Once you get there, listen, non-judgmentally. No judgment, no bias, just listen to what the person has to say. And also for those doers out there, those people that are problem fixers, do not try to fix the problem in this moment. Just step back, take a deep breath, and listen. Then you want to give the person some reassurance and possibly some information, which we will talk about in a little bit. With the reassurance or the information, you're going to make sure that you just give someone like, hey, you know what? You're not alone. There are people that care about you. You can think of a million different words of re-encouragement, and I'm sure your kids know a lot. You can talk to them about this. Like, what's a good phrase for re-encouragement or for encouragement? And they will come up with some. The next part, so the reassurance is, we're here, you're safe, that type of stuff. Everything's going to be okay. Maybe giving them some information, encourage. That's that encouragement, right? What we talked about, right? You can also encourage people as part of the reassurance. The reassurance part can be encouraging. You also can encourage once people have calmed down or you think they're in a place where they can listen to you. You might encourage folks to seek professional help. You can also encourage folks to do things that help with their own self-care. So if this is an adult, you might say like, hey, you've been really stressed out for a while. When's the last time you exercised? When's the last time you took a day off? When's the last time you got a babysitter? All of those things can be really helpful for your kids. It might be, when you get frustrated, how do you handle it? And talking through how they handle tough, stressful situations. And when they don't have the best answers, give them some. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to watch a video and about what families, some case studies of families that have gone through this. Oh, but not before that happens. Just kidding. Okay. So I'm going to readjust. You make sure I can share this with you. Sorry for the delay.
In October of 2012, I lost my 14-year-old son, Palmer Burke, to a suicide by firearm. Palmer was probably one of the most just creative, outgoing, thoughtful kids. Here it is 4 years later, and I still feel like I'm in shock when I look at the great life my son had. He was, tall, handsome, athletic, had tons of friends, and lots of successes and plans, and it just ended. I really had no idea. Suicide was not on our radar. We didn't know enough about teen mental health or signs of suicide or teen depression.
One of the challenging parts of identifying kids at risk for suicide is that this can come up and look very different for different kids. So some of the time we have adolescents show up in our clinic who are functioning very, very well, and no one has any idea that they're suffering. And then there are teens who have more clear risk factors, like they have a history of depression or self-harm. I think there can really be a diverse array of how teens look when they're distressed, and paying attention to the changes in their behavior becomes really key.
Looking back, there definitely were some signs. They were subtle, but he was grumpy. He didn't want me to come into his room the night before, which was unusual. I wish I'd known to ask him and to dig a little deeper, instead of shrugging it off, thinking it was normal teen behavior. If your child gets a sprained ankle, you'll run onto the soccer or football field and you'll know what to do. But when they start to show signs that they're not mentally well, I think a lot of parents don't know what to do.
Ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? Asking the question does not raise risk for an individual. In fact, people can really feel a lot of relief. And parents are also, they know their children so well that they are really the experts here and can identify if there's a change that seems like it's more than momentary. We want to look for a change that's, abrupt and not transient.
One of the things we learned after losing my son, Palmer, was that kids who are feeling suicidal or in a mental health crisis will often tell their friends. And their friends don't know what to do with that information. So I think that's another important part of suicide prevention, is telling your kids that if a friend says to them, I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling suicidal, or I know where my mom or dad keep their gun, or any of those things, that kids should not be afraid to tell adults that they're concerned about a friend. I wish I had checked my son's text messages and emails and Facebook messages regularly. And that was one of the first things I started telling parents after I lost Palmer, and they all said, well, no, that's private. That's like, no, I probably could have saved my son's life had I known what was going on.
If parents are concerned about their child or teen attempting suicide, one of the really critical things is to reduce access to lethal means.
Securing your firearms, securing your prescription drugs, your non-prescription drugs. These are two of the most commonly used methods in Washington State, and they're just so simple to secure them and keep your children and family members safe.
If you're concerned about your child, but it is not urgent, then you can reach out to your primary care physician or the school counselor. If you're concerned that your child is in crisis right now, call our crisis line, and they're available 24/7 and will help guide the parent to the next steps that are necessary. When teens are suicidal, it's not that they necessarily want to end their life, it's that they are in unbearable pain and they don't see any other way out. One really important thing that parents and other people supporting teens can know about suicide is that it is preventable. As a community, we can remain awake to suicide risk, and we can intervene when teens need it most.
Thank you for listening to that with me. I know that was not an easy thing to watch. However, it is really important for us to hear those stories so that we can do better, right? So that we can, oh, just kidding. So that we can do better, right? So the first thing I want to do, there were a bunch of things in this video that pointed out a few myths that I've definitely run into in my career about suicidal ideations, harming oneself, and what that means. So I want to point a few of these out, and I hope that the technology will work for us. Oh, well, that popped up faster than I wanted, but okay. So suicide myths. The first one is asking a person about suicide will encourage the person to attempt it. That is an absolute myth. That is not true at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. All the research points towards if you ask someone directly, it will actually serve as a deterrent and will encourage the person, give the person some more encouragement to seek help. The next one, man, these come up too fast for me. Once a person is considering suicide, there's nothing you can do. Also completely false, right? Most people that feel like they want to end their life, it's only for a brief period. And like the woman in the video said, they're feeling unbearable pain. They see no other alternative. So for someone in this, I use the first aiders, right? So for you being on the front line, you can play a role in providing support in helping them get the appropriate help that they need. So suicide, a person who attempts suicide will always be suicidal. That's not true either. There are lots of people that go through a period of time where they feel this, they feel like there's nothing else they can do. But really, this is a time limited and is based on the stress level in the moment. So also false. The last one, suicide happens without warning. Even though it feels this way, for a lot of folks that were on the outside and are shocked by when it happens, there are often clues and warning signs. You notice the mom in the video listed a few. She talked about the fact that her son had posted things on social media. Her son had talked to his friends. Sometimes the comments that go to their friends are subtle, but things like, oh, I know where my family's firearms are, or subtle comments about wanting to end their life, or even things like, when you turn 20, I want you to remember me as this. Things like that that are different than what they normally talk about can be clear signs that something's going on. And asking is always the best thing you can do to start with that. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that. So, actions. First thing you can do is to ask, okay? Are you thinking about killing yourself, or are you thinking about suicide? It is such an awkward thing to ask. Most of us don't know how to handle that. They don't know. They think that is an awful question to ask. Oh my gosh, I can't ask that. That's ridiculous. I would never ask that. Or you start to rationalize. Why? No, they're like super popular, this and that. It doesn't matter. Stories I hear over and over again are about these high achieving kids that end up doing this because they're so high achieving that when they fail, they haven't been taught how to fail softly, or they haven't been taught how to learn from their failures, or that failures are okay. So now it feels life-threatening. It is threatening who they are, what they're supposed to do, all of this, and they just don't know how to handle it. So just ask. Worst case, they go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Of course I would never do something like that. Fine. Then, you know what? It's all over. Like you don't have to ask that question again. Just then it opens up the conversation saying, well, you've been acting differently lately, so I'm just curious what's going on. If they say yes, then you can work to keep them safe for now. And I put two things on here. 988 is now the 911 for mental health crises. Call 988 if you feel like someone has had these suicidal thoughts, and let them talk to someone. And of course, the other one is 1-800-273-TALK. That is a suicide prevention line, and there are trained professionals there that can help your friend, your child, anyone get help. Okay. So we talked a little bit before that there are warning signs. There are. The child starts talking or writing about death, dying, or suicide a lot. Now, my one caveat with this, for younger kids, they might start talking about this a lot right after someone in their family has passed away. That would be the one exception, because then it's kind of healthy to be curious about death, dying, things like that. Okay. If you start talking about suicide, then that would be a clear warning sign. Otherwise, if there haven't been recent deaths in your family where this would prompt a conversation about death and dying, then you would really want to dig in and say, hey, like, noticed you've been talking a lot about this, or I noticed drawings that you've had have been very dark, and again, asking the question, have you thought of killing yourself? If they've threatened killing themselves or hurting themselves, that can be a real clear warning sign. Now, sometimes teens throw this out pretty easily, oh my gosh, I hate you, I just want to kill myself. Your teen, right? Your teen or your child best. You know how much they throw out those words. If this is the first time they throw something like that out, you need to stop and talk to them about how serious that conversation is. You really need to talk to them about that and recognize that if they say something like that, you're going to take it seriously, and that you might call for help, or you will immediately put them, you will get them a therapist. This is really important to let them know how serious using those types of words are. If you notice that your child starts looking for ways to kill themselves or others, or seeking means, or asking about prescription drugs or firearms, this is another good sign. They show a difference in their anxiety level or agitation. If your child has been anxious most of their life, then what you're looking for is a difference there, a difference in sleep or when they sleep. Maybe they've had something recent that was really tragic, and they start feeling like they have no sense or purpose. They feel like they have no motivation. Okay, those things, they say they feel trapped or there's no way out. All these things can be really clear signs. And again, as a parent, some help there. So first, notice the signs and you can get your child help. The next part of this is talking through helping them find purpose. So maybe they got cut from a team, or didn't make a dance troupe, or they got bad grades for them, or maybe they felt like they did something horrible and they let you and, other people down, remind them that this is just a learning experience, and remind them that if they learn from it, then it's not the end of the world, and talk them through what they learned from it. Be there as someone who can be compassionate, even though you're angry at them for what they did. Remember that they need to feel like there are alternatives, that there are choices, that there are ways that they can correct the wrongs that they've done or they thought they've done. Okay. So as long as they feel like there's a way out and there's a choice, this will keep them out of those suicidal activities. So again, we talked about this. Oh, why did I go backwards? Sorry about that. Okay. So another action, especially if you notice those warning signs, connect them with a professional. If you don't feel as though you're safe, so if this feels really detrimental, then call 911 immediately. Okay. I've had this happen in a family where they had their teen actually had a psychotic break, and the mom went in to try to handle the situation, and the son was big and strong and overpowering, and the father had to call 911. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do, because then you have trained professionals that can handle the emergency, that will help de-escalate the situation. Okay, so part of how to assess, I've talked a lot about this. So first, you just assess the situation. What's going on? What are they saying? What are they doing? Ask the question. If they say yes, they've had thoughts of this, then ask them next about how they are planning. This will not bring them closer to it. Okay. This is where people get really scared and they don't know what to do. And they're like, well, I'm not going to ask them how they plan to do it. That might help them figure out how to do it. It doesn't. Okay. If you ask them about planning, and past experience when I've had this with my clients, I do ask them the question. They will say, yes, I've thought about this. And then I ask, well, have you thought about how you're going to do this? And then they'll usually be pretty honest with you. I was like, yeah. And then you keep asking them questions about it, right? So if they say, oh, well, I'm gonna take this. Well, do you have access to that in your house? If it's your house, then you'll know immediately, oh, they have access to that or they don't. Or do you have a friend that has, where would you get that? You just ask them that. Again, it's not bringing them closer to it. It's allowing you to assess whether or not this is something they can really do and they've thought it through. If they answer all these questions, so they have a plan, and ask them again, have you decided that this is what you're going to do? That's a really hard question to ask, especially as a parent. If they say yes, you've got to call 911. Okay. You can ask them and look for signs of it. If they've done things like cutting or self-harm, you want to go back to step 2 and ask questions about have they thought about killing themselves. Sometimes hurting and killing are different. The kids will feel pain and they'll cut to feel a different type of pain because they don't want to feel that emotional pain that they've been struggling with. So ask them about that, because that too can bring them further away from it. So kind of back for a second. So this was a tough one. I want to go through stages of kids' lives. We did this the other night. I'll first show this, and then I want to point out some, how this can kind of be imposed. Maybe not directly, maybe not asking specifically about, have you thought about killing yourself, but asking about like, are you okay? And a lot of kids, if you just say like, how are you doing? Fine. Classic answer. I'd be a millionaire for every answer of fine I got if people would just pay me $1 every time they said it. Instead, ask more specific questions. Are you okay? Have you thought about killing yourself? Do you feel like you have other options? Right? These are more specific and more pointed. So I want to show this video and talk a little bit about this one after we watch it.
I got him. Oh my god, I got right on his head. He's so pathetic. Oh, he's so sad. Is he gonna eat it? Oh my god. Lunch is served, buddy.
I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Raquel. Noah has a, history of incidents. Why do the quiet ones always get picked on? We take bullying very seriously. We can't police the internet, of course, but I'll make a report of it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hey, are you okay?
Hey, Raquel. Raquel. Raquel.
Kel. You're kind of quiet. Those kids still bothering you? Hey, just don't let those jerks on the internet get to you. You're lucky. Nowadays, you can just block them. Case closed.
you okay?
Man, this sucks.
I'm really feeling that one.
I know, right?
Thanks again for watching another one of those videos. I found that one just so good about explaining to kids or just to anyone, really giving an explanation of how sometimes, we just don't feel like ourselves. So, and, just asking the question, are you okay, can be so, so helpful. I really loved the fact that it highlighted social media, and for a lot of our adolescents and teens, social media is a huge part of their life. And so we have to acknowledge that and recognize that we can't prevent them from being on social media, but we certainly can try to, like the mom said, monitor it to a certain extent. Also, pay attention and report when bullies begin. It's really hard, like the school said, it's hard to police the entire internet, but when you find things that are threatening, reporting it. And talking to your kid about what that's like and are they okay? And fortunately, the father was really dismissive. He did ask, but then he said, oh, you can just block them, right? Maybe asking his daughter, well, how's that making you feel? Or, you know, giving her some sort of positive support in how to handle it, besides just, oh, we'll just block them, then it's all over, right? Because those kids still go to school with her. So some things I wanted to point out quickly related to just related to the different stages in a child's life as far as interacting and being or being able to understand where oh, and it went over one. There we go. So for kids, and I mentioned this when we did the grieving one, but I thought these slides were important again, it's presenting behaviors, saying I'm fine, but not, shutting somebody out. I just used these grief slides over, so I apologize for the grief stuff, but it's still relevant, right? Noticing any change in behavior. So for middle childhood kids, these are the signs that are going to be helpful to recognize. For elementary school kids, there might be, you might notice, and while suicide is less prevalent in younger kids, it's still something where kids might try to hurt themselves, and if they have access to something, it's still possible. So making sure that firearms are locked up, they are out of access of children. They are not something that they are allowed to get to on a regular basis without, certainly not at all without an adult, right? When to seek help, we've already talked about this. We talked about, a change of behavior, a change in the way they're interacting with others. Maybe they stop talking to their friends. All of these things can be important, and I'll go back to the slides from earlier, really paying attention really paying attention to this crisis versus emergency, right? So when, you know, your child is admitting to suicidal ideations, when your child is admitting to these warning signs, when your child is talking about death or dying, they're talking about no reasons for living, and they show extreme anxiety or agitation. All of these things are warning signs, and you want to seek help. And Bay Community can help, but so can so many other places. And if you need something immediately, you can always call 911 or 988 to get immediate help. Places like BetterHelp and so Talkspace, all of these online, they're also available and can help. So I leave this with wondering if anyone has any questions. If not, if you have questions, you can always post them on the Facebook page. I really appreciate you listening tonight. This really heavy topic that's just so important for us all to acknowledge. And have a good week, and don't be afraid to ask questions. All right, have a good night, community.